But here cannot.
Pets leave fur and dander behind. The Dyson V12 detects Slim's new motorbar digs deep to remove embedded dirt. Its laser and dust detect technology reveals invisible dust, leaving nothing behind.
Most likely not going to be possible today, but again, we shall see. It is one of the longest races on the calendar as well, regularly taking the Grand Prix close to the 2-hour time limit, even when it runs without interruptions. Not today though, plenty of interruptions there have been. Marina Bay has been known for featuring at least one safety car in every race edition, with a total of 21 safety car deployments so far. Will we see another one tonight? What effect will that have on the eventual race outcome? That is just one of the many questions that will be answered over the next few hours. Another one is, will we see only a fifth different winner here today? So far, only 4 different drivers have ever won the Singapore Grand Prix. Nico Rosberg once back in 2016, Fernando Alonso twice, Lewis Hamilton 4 times, and the man with the most wins, Sebastian Vettel, who has 5, and for whom this will be his last outing at the Marina Bay Street Circuit. A cheer goes up around the crowd. The safety car is doing a lap around the Marina Bay Street Circuit, although I'm not sure what it's trying to find at the moment, because as you can see, there is not just a lot of rain, a lot of standing water as well, which make it very, very difficult for the race to get underway any time in the near future. A shame for the record number of fans who are there at Marina Bay today. It was announced yesterday that the 2022 Singapore Airlines Singapore Grand Prix has set a new record in attendance, with 302,000 fans attending the 3-day event. The previous high, 300,000 for the first night race way back in 2008. And it is little wonder then that in 2022 a contract extension was announced, which of course will put the race on the Formula One calendar until at least 2028. Charles Leclerc referenced the massive fan support yesterday as he took his second consecutive pole position in Singapore in an absorbing final qualifying session. Leclerc's 9th pole in 17 races this season. Mario Sola from Pirelli trying to advise the different teams here what to do in terms of tyre selection. Although that will only become relevant once the race does in fact get underway. A lot of water being kicked up by the safety car as it goes around the street circuit. Charles Leclerc then, could it be a very important pole position with the weather conditions as they are? He is just one away from clinching the trophy for most poles of the season, although it will be little consolation after his title hopes were ruined by Ferrari's collective errors earlier on this year. That being said, he is still able to throw a temporary spanner in the works tonight and possibly delay Max Verstappen's coronation a little while longer. The current world champion was furious yesterday after on the surface appearing to have the pace to take pole, but Verstappen abandoned his penultimate lap after an error and then was told urgently to pit before finishing his final one, meaning he will only start 8th on the grid. And if you were watching qualifying yesterday, you will know that Verstappen wasn't too happy about the entire qualifying situation, hurling a few expletives over the team radio. Christian Horner refusing to say then and there what the reasons were for his instructions for Verstappen to pit on his final lap, but it later transpired that his car barely had enough fuel left in order to provide a post-session sample to the FIA. You need about a litre worth of fuel left in the car when they come in for the pit so that the FIA can do their relevant checks, and if they hadn't had that litre in the car, then Verstappen would have had to have started today's race from the back of the grid. So the lesser of two evils in the end, and Verstappen starting from 8th knows that, perhaps not on this circuit, but it is possible to surge through the pack in that Red Bull of his. In terms of the permutations, by the way, if you're wondering what Verstappen needs to do in order to seal the title tonight, well, first off, he must win the race. Now, if he does win the race, then Charles Leclerc must finish lower than 8th. with teammate Sergio Perez finishing 4th or lower for Verstappen to be crowned champion once more and hold on to that crown that he won last year in the very final race. If Verstappen also picks up the extra point for fastest lap, then Leclerc must finish lower than 7th, so outscore Leclerc by 22 points and Perez by 13, and the title will be Max's once more. That being said, 8th isn't too bad for a driver who's appeared to be able to win from anywhere on the grid this season. In Hungary at the beginning of August, Verstappen started 10th and won. In Belgium, after the summer break, he was 15th on the grid and won. And most recently at the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, he started 7th and, yep, he won again. So you never know. The safety car continues to go around this Marina Bay Street circuit. I'm scared to say that it looks like it's drying up a little bit. A lot of standing water, as you can see, but the rain looks like it has started to fall a little bit less than it was earlier on in the evening. But the whole start procedure has been delayed, and we will give you more information when we have it. But at the moment, we will not see any race action for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. What must Max Verstappen be thinking in his box at the moment? This Formula One season is really kind of distilled into a sort of a challenge Max Verstappen show. Pick a grid for the Red Bull driver, a good position, and see if he can win from there. Because the answer has, on the whole, been yes, he can. Of course, this season hasn't always been Max Verstappen's. It hasn't always been Red Bull's. It's turned around pretty quickly because there was a period not too long ago when Red Bull and Ferrari were engaged in a very tough battle. But Ferrari's errors and mishaps and some incorrect team decisions have helped Verstappen's cause for quite some time. As recently as late July, though, there was little to choose between the two teams in terms of performance, but not anymore. The Italian Grand Prix last time out, a perfect demonstration of how the margin between the teams has grown in just a month or two, from a little bit of a margin to a massive margin to put Verstappen into this position to possibly, very possibly, wrap it up on his first attempt here in Singapore, round 17 of the World Championship. We will give you more updates if and when we have them, and give you an update as to when this race might get underway, but for now, we're going to go for a very short break.
What drives you matters most. Direct Asia.
Welcome back to MediaCorp's live coverage of the Singapore Airlines Singapore Grand Prix 2022, coming to you from the incredible Marina Bay Street Circuit, and the incredible Singapore skyline shines in the night sky, even if the rain is trying its best to dull the atmosphere at the moment down there at the circuit. If you are just joining us, it is raining, and it hasn't stopped raining in the past couple of minutes that we were away on a break. The whole start procedure has still been delayed, and we will give you updates when we have them in terms of when this race will get underway and what an important race it could be in terms of the entire Formula One season. It is round 17, but it could be the one where Max Verstappen wins the championship. Will Arnett, one of the many celebrities here in Singapore at the moment, watching the race unfold. He's in a rather more enviable position of being in the shelter of the McLaren garage, talking to Daniel Ricciardo, keeping nice and dry, and cool it looks as well. Daniel Ricciardo, well, his future very much up in the air as we look towards 2023, and it wasn't helped by a pretty poor showing from the Australian in qualifying yesterday as well. His teammate Lando Norris running the upgraded package yesterday. Ricciardo was not, but even so, the Aussie just not looking comfortable last night. Exiting at the first time of asking in Q1. He will be lining up 17th on the grid today. It's been a tough season for Daniel Ricciardo. 14th in the championship. 19 points from 16 races thus far. The stewards and the race marshals doing their very best to try and remove some of the water from pit lane. I would not want to have that job right now, because as quickly as you clear the water away, more will come down. But it does look like there is some movement in terms of trying to get this race underway as quickly as it can. A bit of a reminder of your starting grid for today. On pole, Charles Leclerc with a qualifying time of 1:49.412, the Monegasque. Second in the championship, 219 points. It is his 9th pole in 17 races this season, and his 2nd consecutive pole here in Singapore. Of course, I say consecutive. The previous pole position coming back in 2019, thanks to the 2-year hiatus. Leclerc started that race in first in 2019, ultimately finishing 2nd behind his then teammate Sebastian Vettel. Can he become only the 5th different winner here in Singapore at the Marina Bay Street Circuit? It is an incredible sight as the drone pans from, of course, Marina Bay Sands across to Gardens by the Bay with the flyer in the background and the circuit lit up, ready to host this race even when it gets underway. Carlos Sainz there in the Ferrari garage looking on with his team. He made sure yesterday that both Ferraris are starting on the front 2 rows of the grid for today's race. Fastest in practice on Friday. He will have been a little bit disappointed to be starting P4 today, but still a very useful position to make a bid for at least a podium finish, although he did admit he was surprised by how bumpy the car was in general and how rough his Ferrari felt out there on the track at times yesterday. Ayo Komatsu, Director of Engineering at Haas, watching on alongside his team boss. Both Haas drivers making mistakes on their opening runs in Q1, leaving them with lap times as the track improved. Kevin Magnussen, the best Haas driver, starting the grid in ninth. Sebastian Vettel getting ready to say goodbye to this beloved Marina Bay Street Circuit of his, and he is adored by the Singapore fans as well. I saw a handmade sign actually from one of the fans at Marina Bay yesterday describing Vettel as the Lion of Singapore. I don't know if it's just because of his hairstyle and the way that his mane now looks, but it is an apt description of Sebastian Vettel because his reputation is impeccable at the Singapore Grand Prix. 5 wins here, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2015 and 2019. The most by any driver. And aside from a first lap retirement from Vettel in 2017, he has never finished outside the top 5 in 6 other starts. Today, the German will start from P14. What an incredible sight that is. Singapore lit up, welcoming back the Grand Prix for the first time in 3 years. Not quite the welcome back that we had hoped for with this weather. It does look like it is drying up a little bit. I was hoping myself that seeing the grey clouds in the sky on the way in today, that perhaps it might have been like yesterday, and the rain might have gotten out of the way before the track action properly gets underway. But the weather gods had other plans today, as our start is delayed here. We will bring you further updates when we have them. is still falling here at the Marina Bay Street Circuit, although everyone is remaining in a very positive mood as the stewards desperately look to try and push away the rain. We have an update for you. The start procedure will begin at 8:05, that is in 10 minutes time. The pit lane will open at 8:25 and there will be 10 minutes for all the cars to get out before the pit lane closes at 8:35, and the formation lap will begin at 9:05 p.m. That is very good news indeed, because it did look about half an hour or so ago that we might not have any action at all. So the fact that the start procedure will begin in 10 minutes, very good news indeed, whether you're watching at home here with us on MediaCorp or down at the Marina Bay Street Circuit itself. Of course, the cars haven't had too much practice in this weather. Lando Norris will be trying to get all the latest information from his data engineers before heading out. Lando Norris admitting that whereas a lot of the other drivers have done a lot of warm weather preparation, he has been using his time here in Singapore to explore some great dining options, and he's looking at the weather radar like all of us are actually at the moment, seeing the rain clouds. I'm trying to see behind Lando Norris here, potentially moving away from the Marina Bay Street Circuit, which is probably why the start procedure has been decided to start at 8:05. Lando Norris starting P6 for today's race. And McLaren need these points actually today, because they're embroiled in a tense title battle with Alpine. They're just 18 points ahead in the Constructors' Championship. What about Mercedes then? Could Lewis Hamilton be claiming his very first win of the season? It looked at one point yesterday in qualifying that Hamilton might actually take pole. It was very close between himself, Leclerc and Perez, but he failed by 0.054 seconds, so lining up P3, the Brit. But nevertheless, it was his best qualifying result of the year. The thing with Lewis Hamilton is that he has picked up a win in every single season that he has raced in Formula One, dating way back to McLaren in 2007. So the seven-time world champ will be looking to finally pick up his first win of the season here in Singapore. He's on the longest winless run of his career, dating back to last December's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Pierre Gasly there looking on with his AlphaTauri team as well. Everybody just trying to decide what are we going to do when the start procedure begins in about 7 minutes' time. Pierre Gasly, of course, if you remember, his car burst into flames during practice on Friday whilst he was still in the cockpit. Thankfully, he was able to escape the cockpit for safety. The nearby Aston Martin mechanics reacting quickly and extinguishing the fire as Gasly got himself out of the car. But he'll be lining up P7 today for AlphaTauri. You will see the marshals just earlier trying to remove some of the standing water, because that, in essence, is more danger to the drivers and the cars than the actual falling rain, which, if it stays consistent, should be rather manageable. Dr. Helmut Marko talking to Christian Horner there, team principal and CEO of Red Bull Racing, perhaps asking him, is our boy going to be crowned champion by the end of today? Max Verstappen potentially looking to defend the crown that he picked up last year and be made a double world champion in Formula One. The bad news for Verstappen and his fans is that he is starting way back in P8 on the grid after a bit of disaster in qualifying yesterday and some poor communication between himself and his team about the amount of fuel left in that Red Bull car. The permutations, I will give them to you once again if you are just joining us, in terms of how Max Verstappen could be crowned world champion tonight. The Dutchman currently holds a 116-point lead over Charles Leclerc with 6 races remaining and with 1 sprint event still to come as well. So that means there is a total of 164 points still on the table. So that means that Verstappen will need to leave Singapore with a lead of at least 138 points, meaning only a victory tonight will do. Now, bear with me. The thing with permutations when it comes to titles is that there are a lot of, if this happens, this might happen. But if Verstappen wins, then Leclerc needs to finish at least 8th to stop him from winning the title, or 7th if Verstappen also sets the fastest lap. Should Leclerc fail to do that, then Sergio Perez can in fact delay his teammates' celebrations by finishing in the top 3, whether Verstappen wins with the fastest lap or not. One man is still in contention is George Russell, although Verstappen victory would end those hopes regardless. And we'll have to wait and see whether Sergio Perez, who could possibly delay Max Verstappen's coronation, might be given some kind of team orders by Christian Horner if it comes down to it today. I don't want to jinx it as I see that safety car going around the Marine Bay Street circuit, but it is looking significantly drier, isn't it? And you can see the marshals running around. In fact, they've taken the kind of hood off their rain jacket, potentially signalling that the rain has stopped falling. I can't really tell from where I'm sitting, unfortunately, but Max Verstappen's father certainly can. Jos Verstappen there talking to the team as well. He is looking in a rather brilliant mood, isn't he, despite the fact that Max has a lot riding on today's race. There is, of course, a lot of time still to play with when it comes to Max Verstappen and the title. Plenty more races still to come, and Verstappen himself not particularly thinking about a race win or even a podium today. He says better chances will come for him now. It's just about scoring some valuable points here in Singapore. K-Mag, Kevin Magnussen, the top Haas driver in qualifying yesterday. He starts from P9 on the grid. Both Haas drivers making mistakes on their opening runs in Q1, leaving them without lap times as the track improved. But they delivered with last gasp efforts to make Q2. It is Magnussen who, in fact, is chasing his first points finish since Silverstone. And he spoke earlier on this season about losing his way, but he's changed his race engineer. This weekend he's working with Haas's new recruit Mark Slade for the first time, and the pair seem to have worked wonders as K-Mag qualified within the top 10 yesterday. He says that he's looking forward to potentially a very good result here tonight. If you are just joining us here on MediaCorp for our live coverage of the 2022 Singapore Airlines Singapore Grand Prix, we had a bit of a delay to proceedings due to the rain, but the start procedure will be beginning in 2 minutes' time, with the pit lane opening at 8:25 as Mick Schumacher looks on. A lot's riding on this race, actually, for Mick Schumacher in terms of his future in Formula One, because his boss, Gunther Steiner, has been blowing rather hot and cold when it comes to discussing the future of Mick in the team at the moment. He's shown flashes and scored his first and second F1 points finishes this season, but he's not taken a major step to matching Kevin Magnussen recently. There's a lot of speculation about whether or not the former F2 driver will remain in the Premier class next year. The likes of Daniel Ricciardo, Antonio Giovinazzi, and Nico Hülkenberg, all names in the hat when it comes to potentially replacing Schumacher at Haas next year. Despite the rain and the wet conditions and the delayed proceedings, I love the fact that you can still hear the crowd cheering as that safety car goes by. Perhaps the cheers are getting even louder because they can see that the safety car is picking up a bit of speed as the track tries to slowly dry out in certain areas, although as you can see now it's just entered a rather wet patch on that straight as we take you into the Alpine garage and see Esteban Ocon looking on. It's been a tough season for Esteban Ocon and a tough qualifying for him yesterday as well. He struggled with his brakes as he surprisingly exited in Q1 yesterday, despite having been best of the rest in both of Friday's practice sessions. And Ocon will be starting from P18 on the grid. A little bit further up on the grid, Zhou Guanyu, who has confirmed to be staying at Alfa Romeo for next season. He'll be starting on 15th as his team principal Frédéric Vasseur looks on from the sidelines. He's quite happy with how things went in qualifying yesterday, actually, Joe, considering it was his first time in Singapore. He's the only rookie on the grid for 2022, so he will be learning as he goes along here at the Marina Bay Street circuit. Gasly, number 77, looking on there, and he posted a rather hilarious Instagram photo in the lead up to this Singapore Grand Prix of himself in the sauna, wearing very little indeed, actually. Not much left of the imagination. It's his way of preparing for this Singapore Grand Prix. And on the subject of the sauna, you can see the fire going rather strongly there as the satay is waiting to be put on it. At least it's heating up on the barbecue, if not heating up on the track at the moment. Nick De Vries looking on, a reserve driver for Mercedes AMG, who came to the rescue when Alex Albon was forced out of the last race with an emergency appendicitis. And the way that De Vries handled himself in that race, scoring points on his debut, has brought his name into contention when it comes to the seats that are still vacant on the grid next year. And it'll be interesting to see where the Belgian does end up. His stock has rapidly been rising in the past couple of weeks.